Stockholm Syndrome of the African people. There is something which has plagued the minds of African people worldwide, which is so subtle yet all-pervasive that we fail to appreciate the significant impact it's had on our self-identity. We as African people, both in the diaspora and on the continent, are beginning to realize the long-term impacts of colonialism on our self-identity. Our colonizers did not only colonize us physically but also psychologically. The long-term impact of this on our psyches is what can be described as the Stockholm Syndrome of the African people. Those of us who are aware of Stockholm Syndrome are aware that it's a psychological condition that causes a captive to develop feelings of affection and emotional attachment to their captors. And even upon release, they still hold on to these positive associations, despite the horrific experience of being held in captivity. We as the African people have fallen in love with our colonizers. We have adopted their worldview, we have copied their political and economic and educational systems. We still believe that Western civilization is superior to our own, and that is why we take great pride in migrating west. A key pillar of the Great Return philosophy is us as a people beginning to question this fundamental premise and long-held view that everything about the West is best and that Western civilization is superior to our own. Those of us who live in the diaspora have become exposed to the harsh realities of the Western world, and we are beginning to see all the flaws and iniquities of Western civilization. We see the problems the Western world is facing with the breakdown of the nuclear family, mental health crisis, growing inequality, substance abuse, a crumbling educational and health system, and the moral degeneration that takes place when there is a lack of any spiritual foundation. This has caused us to realize that we as African people cannot simply use the Western world as a blueprint for our own development. Some of us are even going a step further to learn more about our own African philosophy, learn about our great African empires and great African civilizations. We are beginning to realize that we have to reclaim our minds from our colonizers. We can no longer validate ourselves based on the extent to which we are able to model ourselves in their image and their likeness. We are starting to realize that we must rediscover what it truly means to be authentically African. We are realizing we need to become original in our way of thinking, how we understand ourselves, the world, and the kind of relationship we ought to have with the world. Those of us who are participating in the Great Return are rediscovering a sense of pride in their African identity. We no longer hold on to the deeply held inferiority complex that for so long made us view the Western world as superior to us. We are able to respect the Western world for its achievements and some of the advancements it has made in contributing towards human development. But we're also aware of Africa's historical influence in leading the world and influencing the development of other civilizations. We recognize that the experience of colonialism took us away from our natural evolutionary path, and we must forge a new identity for ourselves that combines the best of our authentic African heritage and incorporates some of the good ideas from other parts of the world. What we must not do is simply take what the Western world prescribes to us as the gospel truth. We know better, and it's partly our responsibility to educate Africans on the continent about the need to break away from Stockholm Syndrome that we are currently suffering from. Our return back to the continent must serve the purpose of signaling to African people worldwide and on the continent that there is a new African dream, and what we have been seeking in the West can only be found here on the motherland. And what prevents us from realizing this truth is the fact that as a people, we need to heal from the Stockholm Syndrome we have been suffering from.